Hey, welcome back to another very exciting video here at the PhotoshopTrainingChannel.com. My name is Jesús Ramirez, and you can find me on Twitter at JR from PTC. In this video, I'll be sharing with you the recording to the Wacom tablet presentation that I did at the Adobe Headquarters for the Creative Cloud User Group of San Jose. I was joined remotely by Garro, who was in Costa Rica, and Sebastian Bleak, who was in Los Angeles, California. They discuss how Wacom tablets interact with both Illustrator and the Astute Graphics plugins. We also had Dempsey from Wacom, who had a display with all the latest tablets, and he was kind enough to give one out at the end to a lucky winner. I spoke last, and I focused on Photoshop, but I also talked a bit about how Wacom tablets could be used in Lightroom. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the people who attended live and all those who watched live online. I would also like to thank my friend, Sally Cox, who is the person who runs the Creative Cloud User Group of San Jose, and she also made this event possible. And of course, I would like to thank Carlos and Sebastian for the awesome job they did presenting. And if you look at the description of this video down below, you will see the links to the other presenters' websites and to Sally's user group. They're all filled with amazing resources that you may find valuable. First, you will hear from Garro, and then from Sebastian Bleak. My part starts at about an hour and 8 minutes into the video. So I hope that you enjoy this presentation and that you will find the information helpful. Leave your comments or questions below, and don't forget to click that like button or subscribe if you haven't already. And we're going to get started with Carlos.
Presentation with Sebastian and Jesús. Latino Power is in the house, right? Let me tell you about how I met Wacom. I call my presentation Choosing the Right Tool. Okay, I started in this business in 1993. When I started working in an advertising agency, this is the first computer, the first supercomputer I met when I started working. This is the Apple Macintosh Quadrant 950. Okay, they call it the most powerful Macintosh ever. As you can see, the aspect is very funny. 64 megabytes of RAM. But this time, the only interaction that you can have with the computer is the mouse. As you can see, this little mouse in the right, the only interface that we have when we're working on the computer on this time. But before that, Japanese company called Wacom invent these little tablets. This is the first Wacom I used there in 1993. This is a bulky Wacom SD 420. This is the first drawing tablet in the market here in Costa Rica. Then technology changed a little bit. This is the first PowerPC Macintosh right there in 1994. One of the most powerful Macintosh in this time. And I can use also the Wacom tablet in this computer. Instead of we have to reinstall all the drivers, this old tablet use a serial port. Maybe you don't know about this serial port that the Macintosh use. Technology changes, well, not so fast in this time. But in 1998, this tiny little Mac came to the game. And Mr. Jobs returns to Apple in the last 4 years, from 1994 to 1998. I used the mouse to make all my design, all my drawings, all my retouching in Photoshop, etc. When this machine came out, I have a little problem with my hand because someone in Cupertino thinks this hokey-pokey mouse is an ergonomic device. It caused me a lot of problems in my hand. In fact, this is an actual representation of how my hand finished at this time. Then a good friend from Macromedia said to me, "Hey, Carlos, why not using the Wacom and the regular basic for make all your presentations, to make all your work and the everyday basics?" Well, that's okay. I threw the mouse, this hokey pokey mouse, through the trash, and start using my Intuos as a complete machine. And the right is me unboxing my new Intuos, 1995. From this time to now, I only use Wacom for all my work. I have the luck to use all the tablets, almost all the tablets in the market. Maybe you have one of these hidden in your closet, and this year we can have access to these new models. This is the Intuos. Maybe Ed can show you in more detail in the room. And this is my favorite tablet. This is the Wacom Intuos Pro. This is the tablet that I use every day in my work, even to look cats in YouTube and put some notes on Facebook. This is my everyday tablet. But we have another products. We have this beautiful piece. This is the Cintiq line. We have the Cintiq 20, 22, 24, and 27 inches. This is the greatest tablet that we have right now in the market. It's beautiful. It's great. It's amazing. But right now I'm using this little baby. It's a Wacom Cintiq. It's an all-in-one tablet with Windows, and is capable to run all our graphic software directly in one piece. Okay? It's important to know that every Wacom tablet came with different stylus, and in this case, I want to show you 3 different stylus you can use in your work for different needs. Okay? For example, this is the grid pen. The grid pen available in the Intuos Pro tablet came with 10 different points, so you can try different textures when you drawing directly on the tablet. This is the grid pen. But we also have the Pro Pen tool. The Pro Pen is available on the Cintiq companion, and in their new Cintiq directly. It came in a beautiful package. Okay. We have special tools like the R Pen. The R Pen is the only stylus that you can make some different transformation. For example, in Illustrator, and I'm sure Jesús will show you later in Photoshop, because with this pen you can make a lot of more stuff than we can available with this and this. Okay, and I will show you directly in Illustrator how to use this. This is my favorite pen, by the way. But we have also an Arbor's pen. Okay, all these pens are available as a separate item and an accessory, and you can buy this directly on the Wacom store or on your local dealer directly. Okay. There are also a professional accessory kit to improve your grip pen with different tips and different grips directly in this accessory. Okay. Enough of slides. Let me show you how to use this little baby directly in Illustrator. Okay. It's important for you to know that using this the Wacom Cintiq companion. It's a Windows machine. Okay. When in every Wacom tablet you have access to the Wacom Desktop Center, when you can set up different preference for your Wacom. For example, you can change the pen settings, and you can program the different settings of this pen. Even if you have multiple pens, you can change the preference for these pens for all the application, or you can add a specific application, for example, Illustrator, and you can set up different settings for this pen in Illustrator, different settings for this pen in Photoshop, etc., etc. Okay, you can set up, for example, in this case, the functions available in the buttons on the side of my companion right now, and this machine is also a touch device, so you can have access to all the touch tools, for example, available in Illustrator. Okay, it's a beautiful machine, and let me show you how to use, you could take advantage of this tablet. What I show you is how to make all different stuff, and the thing that I want to show you, you can do it with this tablet, or for example with the Intuos Pro. Okay, you can take advantage of this technology, of the Wacom technology, directly from for some tools. For example, you can access the brush tool, the paintbrush tool, but in the standard brush tool, you can grab one of these, trace directly in the screen in this case, or if you're using your Intuos Pro, you can do it in your device directly. But in this particular tool, exactly the calligraphy one, you don't have access right now from the scratch to take advantage of the level of pressure that you can apply to your tablet. If you want to edit one of these, I recommend you to make a copy, double click in the options, and now you can have access to the settings only available if you have a Wacom tablet connected to your computer. For example, you can change your angle, and you can play or apply different pressures, different rotation, different tilt angle, different bearing, and depends of the pen that you use directly. So you can change, for example, the size of the pen. I can change the setting right here to pressure and make a variation of 5 points in this case. And you can see when I draw and press hard, I have a different character for the line here directly in Illustrator. Okay, I love this feature. You can also have different settings. If you make, for example, a new brush, and you select the now so new bristle brush. Okay, the bristle brush, you have access to different kind of brushes. Okay, different settings right here. But if you check this out, you have no access directly to the Wacom settings. But press OK right here. Choose another color from the swatches palette. I'm sure to select this. You can see it in my screen. Let me make this brush a little bigger with the left bracket or the right bracket. I can grab and trace. Okay. But if you use the art pen, now I'm switching my pens. You can rotate, you can make varying rotation with this pen when you're drawing, or this feature is only available with the art pen. For example, if I grab the grid pen, I can rotate, I can make a varying rotation right now. But this feature is only available for the art pen. Okay, if you double click right here, the options, you can have access to this. But when you are using this brush, depending on the pressure that you make on your tablet, you can change the opacity. For example, if I just touch the tablet, have no a little opacity. If I press hard and hard, I can build up different pressures, different levels, and different opacity just in Illustrator. Okay? Another feature right here. I use this all the time to make something like that. Okay? This is a bowl. With this bowl, I make this, and I love to use these tools for making. Well, right now, made a copy of this here. Oh, sorry. I have to press the Alt key. Bigger. Oh. Okay. Center these babies right here. And I would use the shape builder tool to remove, for example, this from the top. I love to use this feature we call draw inside right here in the toolbox, so I can draw directly inside of this shape. Change the fill color. Then let me grab one of my brushes with a different color. Remember, when you use a brush to apply different color, you have to select the stroke color directly in your toolbox right now. I click right here, and with the preference of draw inside the connector right now, I can draw inside the bowl. Okay, I love this feature. Change the color. Of course, you have to take care of this because let me press the control to see the outline. You have to take control of this because sometimes it will convert in a messy Illustrator file. Okay. The other tool when you take it that you can take advantage of the Wacom tablet is in the blob brush. If you are using the blob brush, you're able to draw shapes. Press Ctrl I here. With the introduction of the blob brush, you are able to paint. Like you paint, for example, in Flash, and if you flip your pen, you can erase this shape. That's a normal eraser. Thank you. Okay, if you complement these tools, let me double click on the blob brush to show you the options. You can change the size, the angle, the roundness of the path of the trace. Excuse me, and you can make some funny stuff. For this, I make a little introduction without not making so much explanation. But if you look at my Illustrator and you look at the Sebastian Illustrator, we have a special power right here because we are using Astute Graphics plugins. So without any further explanation, let me show you how I use the blob brush to make some kind of pattern like this, or like this, or like this, or like this. Okay. If you can see in the background of my file right now, I make a sketch and I scan this sketch and put as a template right here in Illustrator just to make a guide about what I want to do. Okay, let me make another layer. I use this feature. I use one of the greatest plugins I ever met, this MirrorMe from Astute Graphics. Okay, but let me use later because I want to show you a different stuff right here. Okay, I have my layer selected. Let me zoom right here. I choose the blob brush and I make a couple of color themes directly in Adobe Color. So I can use this to paint and make a freeform pattern, for example. So I grab my blob brush, I select one of these colors, and for this creation, I use this feature who called draw behind. So every single path I draw is drawn behind the first one. Let me show you how it works. So if I draw this right here, then select another color and draw directly here, this new shape will be drawn behind the first one. Okay, so I can play with this. Oops, it looks terrible. I have a problem with my keyboard right now. Wait a minute. Problem solved. Okay. Make this big. Change this. As you can see, when I draw, the new drawing shape is drawing behind the first one. Okay. I love this feature when I make this kind of crazy patterns because I can play with this. Remember to select the tool right here. Okay. It looks a little weird right now, but second, how this beauty gain more interest. Okay. Another one right here. Oops. Select the color, maybe it's purple. Okay. Look at this. Okay. When I grab the MirrorMe tool from Astute Graphics, I'm using the blob brush as an initial tool, I can make let me apply this to the layer. Voila. Okay. So if you can pass too many hours drawing, let me grab another time the blob brush. I'm playing around. Let me uncheck the draw behind and make the draw normal tool. And let me play around a little bit. Brush directly some pressure right here. Okay. You can see the sky is the limit because I can apply all the pressure to the tablet. That's why I make these character lines, with different widths directly in Illustrator. But I'm only able to do that if I have a Wacom tablet connected to my computer right now. And you can edit a lot of stuff with it. Okay. Of course, you can use this with the normal.
The system has detected that a minimum number of lines are connected to this conference.
There's some girl talking right now. Or you can use DynamicSketch, and now I pass the mic to my bro Sebastian to continue with Astute Graphics. If you have any further questions, please let me know in the chat window. Thank you so much.
Sebastian, are you there? Okay, so first of all, I want to thank Carlos for an awesome presentation. So for those of you online, up at the very top of your Connect window, there is a little person with their hand raised. If you click the triangle next to it, you can choose applause. Let's give Carlos some applause, and let's give some applause in the room here. It's very loud here right now, Carlos, because everyone's applauding you.
Good job, Carlos.
Excellent job. Okay, we're ready for your dope presentation, Sebastian. Take it away, my friend. This is Sebastian Bleak, who's joining us from LA.
I'm going to just go ahead and run through my demo. So, Sally, if somebody has a question, if you want to stop me, just yell at me or something, and or else I'll just keep on trucking. But hey, folks, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. My name is Sebastian Bleak, and I work for Astute Graphics. Over at Astute Graphics, we make plugins for Adobe Illustrator. For those of you guys that aren't familiar with what plugins are, they're basically just tools that plug right into existing software. And in our case, we're going to be plugging into Adobe Illustrator. Now, one of the plugins you saw earlier, DynamicSketch, that was one of the ones that Carlos was using. And that pie-shaped one he was working with was a plugin that we offer called MirrorMe. So today I'm going to be covering DynamicSketch, WidthScribe, VectorScribe, and Phantasm, and all of these guys, you could download them for free for 14 days with full functionality, so go ahead and try them out. I'd recommend trying them out one at a time, that way you could really get in there and figure them out. All right, so start off with DynamicSketch, and in here we have some pressure sensitivity and some natural drawing along with some gesture trimming. So I'm gonna come back over here to this blank, oh, it was supposed to be blank, there we go. This little blank artboard I got set up right here. And I'm going to bring out my Intuos Pro. So I'm working with Intuos Medium right now. I got the little wireless feature going on there, so that's pretty cool. And along with that, I got my art pin. All right, so in here, you can find DynamicSketch right over here. It's part of the Tools panel. You see DynamicSketch come up. When I click on that, I already activated the tool. But when I'm working with this tool, a lot of times I want to bring up the panel for it. So over here into the Window menu, you can find DynamicSketch and just choose DynamicSketch Panel, and then it'll go ahead and pop out right over here. All right, the reason I like working with this guy is it has all the settings for my tool right in here. So right here it shows that I'm drawing, and this is going to allow me to continue to edit existing paths. But right here, this is pretty important. We have a target here, which is going to represent the accuracy of this tool. So I usually leave this somewhere in the middle. Right here, this iron is for the smoothness. So if I bring this up all the way, it's going to draw out smoother lines, as opposed if I come over here, then it's going to draw out some lines probably more accurate to how I'm drawing. So somewhere in the middle is cool. And right here, we have this section here, and this is for your stroke width. So if we have it on none, it's pretty much going to work like the way you're used to seeing your pencil tool work. So I'm going to come back over here and just switch over so I have a stroke. And I already have the DynamicSketch tool activated. And what I'm going to do is just click and drag and draw out a basic path. All right, so as you can see here, I got a couple of anchor points going on here. But if you're familiar with the pencil tool, you'll notice that we have a lot less anchor points than what you're used to seeing in that. Another cool thing is we have our anchor points positioned in really good locations. We got them right here at the tangencies. So if you guys are familiar with, like let's say, Von Glitchka's workflow with vector stuff, you'll know that we have them set up right here at 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, also at 12 and 3 o'clock whenever we need them. All right, so that's just drawing out a basic path. But if you come back over here, we have sketching speed for those folks that don't have pressure sensitivity on their tablet. Because on my Intuos Pro, I got some stylish pressure here. I could click on that, and now it changes up a bit. I got this little graph right here that'll help me get some more sophisticated looking strokes. But basically what's going on here is right here where we have lower pressure, I'm applying less pressure down in this portion of the graph. it's going to be closer to 0 points as far as my stroke weight goes. Over here, the more pressure I apply, it's going to get closer to 30 points. So let me show you what that means. All right, so I'm just going to hit the D key to make sure I have a default appearance, and I don't need a fill, so let me just get rid of that real quick. All right, cool. So pressure, stylus pressure is activated. I'm just going to click and drag, and I'm drawing out with my art pen, and then I press down a little bit harder. All right, so check this out. Over here, it's nice and thin, and this is the area where I was pressing pretty lightly. And over here, when I started pressing down hard, you see it gets a lot thicker right along here, and then I just kind of wiggled over here at the end, so that's why you see some more anchor points. You could always come over here to stroke and then kind of round these guys off if you want to make it look more like a marker or something like that. But we have these guys already set up here, and if you want to make some changes to it, the reason it's dynamic is, let's say you want it to be a little bit more accurate to your drawing, you'd come this way, or a little bit less, you'd back off on it. Right here, you'd be able to smooth things out, or you could back off on it this way. So basically the cool thing is now you have some more pressure sensitivity in here than what you had before. Now you already have it in the blob brush, and I love using the blob brush for sketching down an idea really quick. But the problem with the blob brush is, let me zoom in on this a little bit. Right here you see that the DynamicSketch tool is laying out this single path like this with a minimum amount of anchor points there. If I were to grab my blob brush by hitting Shift B on my keyboard, now I have this guy activated right here, and you could find the preferences for this guy by hitting Enter on your keyboard. I just want to make sure I have the pressure turned on. So I have it set over here to 41, and the variation set all the way to 41. That way I have the maximum variation, and it's going to be controlled by the pressure. I'll click OK, and so now I'm going to press down lightly, and then I'll press down hard, and then I get this thicker stroke here. Check this out. When I select it, I have a lot more anchor points right in here that I have to deal with compared to this guy right over here. So one of the advantages is you're going to save on file size, and this is going to be a lot easier to edit than this guy is. The blob brush is great, but when I'm finishing off a project, I'm probably going to be using the DynamicSketch. All right, so continuing on the theme of being able to draw naturally using DynamicSketch, one is I like that. I can just come over here and click on this big panel, and it just activates it for me. But we started thinking about different ways that people would draw. Now, one thing you're commonly going to be doing if you're like, let's say, a character drawer or something like that, basically illustrators, we're going to deal with circles a lot. So when you're dealing with like the pencil tool, or if you're dealing with just the regular usage of the DynamicSketch tool, you're going to click and drag, come back around, and then you already slow down to come over here and then connect. What always ends up happening is I always get like a little divot right here. It just ends up not looking exactly how I want. So what we did was we sped things up a little bit. I'm going to show you how that works. All I got to do is click and drag a couple times. What I want to do is make a couple revolutions, and it will finish off that circle for me. So what DynamicSketch is doing is it's averaging out those 3 revolutions I just completed, and it made this circle for me. And it's also using these sliders to figure out what type of circle we should do. All right, like most of the tools in Adobe Illustrator, while you have it activated, if you hit Enter or Return on your keyboard, it's going to bring up your preferences for that tool. Now, right here at the bottom, I'm just going to turn on Show Sketch Trail and get back in here. Now, this is the sketch trail that I created. It's a pretty ugly trail there. I'm a little embarrassed of my drawing skills there, but it makes me look like a pro right here because, see, this is the one that went out the furthest. This is the one that went in the closest to the center, but then this is the one that's averaged out right there, so it ends up looking really clean. All right, so I'm going to get out of here and just get rid of these sketch trails. I also have this feature turned on where it's going to smooth towards circular, and that comes into play right over here with these sliders. So right here under the smooth section, if I back off on that, you see it starts getting a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more dumpy. But as I come towards the right and smooth things out, because I have that feature turned on, I'm going to end up with a perfect circle after a certain point. So I come in here and draw really crazy and then go ahead and smooth it out afterwards, and that's one of the advantages of working with something that's dynamic. We could come back and just edit this guy out. Oops, there we go. Get out of that. There we go. All right, cool. So I'm going to continue drawing this guy out. So next what I want to do is draw lightly and then add a bunch of pressure down in here. All right, so now I got it nice and thick over here, and I want to get rid of this piece right here. So I'm going to shift, click and drag, and now I was able to just chop off that piece right there. So that's what we call gesture trimming. When we have different paths overlapping like that, you're able to just hold down the shift key and just kind of flick it away. It's kind of a fun way to work. I'll show you again right in here. If I were to just click and drag this guy out this way, now I have all this extra stuff over here. I'm going to shift click, and that just flicks that away. Shift X is going to swap out the appearance right there. And so now I got this guy going on here. If I want to just kind of round this guy off a little bit more, what I want to do is just, there we go. And I can just come in here and continue to edit this guy out. All I want to do is turn on the editing feature. And there you go. So now I got this little smoothed out, and I can continue to make this shape however I want, kind of like that. There we go. All right, so let me get rid of this guy. Now I'll come back right over here. And that was what we had for gesture trimming, natural drawing, and pressure sensitivity with DynamicSketch. Next, what I want to do is jump into WidthScribe. In there, we have a brush. It's called the Width Brush tool, and it has some pressure sensitivity in there. It's pretty fun to work with. I have this example right here, Puss in Boots. Let me just go ahead and bring this guy back to how I had it in the beginning. Let's see. There you go, because I was playing around with it a little while ago. All right, so here we go. I got this illustration of Puss in Boots. When I select it, you see over here in the top that it is at 0.25 points. So it's a pretty thin stroke in there. And the reason you don't see all of my anchor points right now is I have them hidden. If you hit Command H, it'll go ahead and expose them. If you hit Command H again, it'll go ahead and hide those edges. And that's just going to allow me to show you what I have going on here. So what I want to do is zoom in right here on these little whiskers that I got going on here. And ever since CS5 and above, we started having access to the width tool. So along with that, we're giving you a different way to work with that technology. So in here, I'm going to grab the width brush tool. It's over here in the tools panel. I'll click on it to activate it, and I'm good to go. Along with it, we also have some preferences. So if I hit enter return on my keyboard, you see that I got the width brush tool options right over here. Now, the first thing you see is brush size. Now, I usually like leaving this guy alone because I could change the size while I'm working on my artwork over here by just using the open and close brackets, kind of like you would with the airbrush over in Photoshop. Over here we have hardness. The way I work with this is the higher you have this, the more dramatic the change is going to be if you back off on this. I usually run around the high 20s or high teens, something like that. So somewhere on this edge is going to make less of a change. Over here towards the right, you're going to make more dramatic change. All right, next we have adjust width by fixed amount. So if you had a fixed amount that you wanted to extend your width to, this is where you would enter that in. And over here we have adjust width by percentage, and I got mine maxed out right now. That's because I'm going to be using this with the pressure sensitivity on my Wacom tablet. Now, because I am using an art pen at the moment, I have access to the tilt, bearing, and the rotation, but it's a lot of fun working with the pressure. So I'll leave that guy set up there. Click OK, and just show you what this is about. All right, so earlier I was telling you about the brush size. So you can see the brush size right now on my artboard. And with the open and close brackets, I could actually go bigger. With my brush right now, I'm using the closed brackets. Now it's too big, so I'm going to back off on that. And I'm using the open brackets to kind of make my brush a little bit smaller. All right, once I got the size right, I'm going to come along here. Now check out this whisker. I want to thicken this guy up. So what I'm going to do is just click and drag really hard as I go along that. So I went ahead and I made a change in there. I can actually make this a little bit smaller. All right, cool. So now this guy over here, this whisker, I'm going to make a change on here, but I'm not going to press as hard this time. I'm just going to click and drag and go along this lightly. All right, so now you see this guy right here is a little bit thicker than this one. And if I keep going over here, just kind of bring the point home, you see right there I'm pressing down really hard, and over here I'm just going along this really lightly. Now this isn't really looking all that great. I wouldn't do this for the project, but I'm just kind of using this to illustrate the point that when you're doing subtle changes, you just press lightly, but then if you want to make some really big changes, you just click and drag right there. I press down really hard, and you see that it's making a drastic change in there. All right, so let me zoom back out a little bit. And the reason I like this tool is it's a lot more intuitive now, the way I'm working with this. So this is something that you would probably create using like your pen tool or whatever your favorite drawing tool is. But then it doesn't feel like it has any life to it, really, because all your strokes are the same width. So a way to play around with that is you get your width brush tool out, fire up the Wacom, and then just set up, make your settings right in here. So if I go along here and right in here, I want this, I got to actually select this guy. So I want to make a really drastic change in here. So I'm pressing down harder than I would like over here because I just want a little bit of a light change. Light change going on here, but right in here, really thick. Something kind of light along here. Changing the boots now. Right here, it's nice and thick along here. maybe not, this time I didn't press down as hard because I saw how much it was here. And you could always back off on it. Right now I'm using one of the modifier keys. I'm holding down the shift key. Now I was able to back off on it. So if I want a little bit more subtle change, I could always come back and edit it. And it's just something that wouldn't be this much fun if I didn't have the pressure sensitivity that I have on this Wacom tablet. So I'm just going along, fixing up some of these eyebrows, pressing it on really thick on these shadowy parts. Maybe his elbow's really close to me, so I'm going to thicken that part up. But then right here, just like a subtle change, something really light. Light changes around here because it's further back. And I would just continue working on that way. So these guys are pretty close, so I'll come in here pretty thick. But these guys are further away, so I would just do a subtle change that way. And you can kind of see how my workflow is with that and how it just makes things a lot more fun with that. So if you want to try that out, you can try it out at astutegraphics.com, and you can try it for free for 14 days there. All right, so that was WidthScribe, and next we're going to jump into VectorScribe. In there we have the Smart Remove brush, and I'm also going to be using PathScribe a little bit to kind of demonstrate, to help me illustrate what's really going on with that Smart Remove brush. Now, this is a really fun tool. This is actually the main one that I wanted to demo today because I found so many uses for it. I used to work at a t-shirt shop, and a lot of people would bring in images that we would have to live trace, which would equal a ton of anchor points, which means my plotter would run really slow. But now I could just brush them away with my Wacom tablet and the Smart Remove brush. All right, so back over here in the Tools panel, if I click and hold right here, if you already have Astute Graphics plugins on there, you're going to find PathScribe, and in the same stack, you're going to find your Smart Remove brush tool. So I want to make sure it's activated, but actually I need some stuff that I could erase. So let's create a little bit of a problem here. All right, I'm grabbing my line segment tool. It's a tool that's native in Adobe Illustrator. I'm just going to click and drag, hold down the shift key, and then release. I want to add a little bit of an appearance here, so I'm going to add a black stroke. And then Shift W gives me the width tool that's native in Adobe Illustrator from CS5 on up. All right, all I'm going to do is click and drag to create a little football type of shape here. All I did was widen up this stroke. So if I go into outline mode, you see it's just a path right here with this little width information going on. All right, now if I were to expand this, which is something we often have to do in our workflow, I would actually want or expect it to only have one anchor point here, 2, 3, and a fourth one down here to complete this shape for me. But in the real world, let's see what happens. If I come over here to Object, Expand Appearance, when I do that, I got a bunch of other anchor points right here that I was not expecting that I'd have. So let me bring up PathScribe so you can see what I'm talking about. If I go to Window, scroll down until I find VectorScribe, I'm going to be able to find PathScribe. It's the PathScribe panel. So I'll click on that. Right here in the PathScribe panel, it's showing me that we have 42 anchor points in this path right here. So that's a lot more than I was expecting. I was expecting 4, and I ended up with 42. So if I come over here into the Tools panel, I could grab this guy right here, and this is my Smart Remove Brush tool. By default, you could already click and drag and start using it, but I'm going to hit Enter Return on my keyboard to bring up the preferences and make a couple of adjustments. Now, by default, I think it comes just like this with only the brush size ready to make a change here. But you could always make a change using your keyboard shortcuts of open and close brackets. So I'm going to leave that guy alone. Now, if I leave this unchecked and just click OK, let's see what happens. At the moment, it's just a brush that is going to completely remove whatever anchor points I'm brushing away, but it's also going to try to retain that shape for me as best it can. So I'm just going to click and drag right along here. And as I continue on, you see I get a little bit of a preview of what my shape is going to look like. And there you go, I'm going to release. Actually, I got that edge right there I didn't want to grab. So here we go. I'm just grabbing these sections. Now release, coming along here. I just want to get rid of all these extra guys here. Just clicking and dragging to get rid of them. So I got 1, 2, 3 over here and a bunch kind of piled up over here. So now I've brought it down to 16 anchor points really quick. If I zoom in on this, I could come in here and just start brushing away the rest of these guys right in here. All right, so now I got it down to 8 anchor points really quick. Now it's going to be a lot easier to edit because if I want to make some changes right here to this, maybe I want to make this a little bit more shallow, I could just click and drag, and I was able to bring this all the way down. Let me bring back some of those anchor points now. All right, so right here I have 42. If I grab that same anchor point, click and drag, only that one comes down, so I have to come over here and grab this guy. And I have to grab these guys and kind of continue on. I could also try to grab multiples and bring those guys down, but that's not really giving me the effect I want. So you see it's a lot easier to work with it if you have less anchor points to deal with. And it's also going to help you on your file size. It's going to help you have smaller, less junky files that way. All right, so back over here to the Smart Remove brush. I'm going to click on it to activate it. Another way you could bring up the options is just by double clicking on the tool, and that's true for a lot of these tools that have options with them. So over here we have Smart Remove Brush Preferences. I'm going to check this box. Now it says only remove points if path changes within this tolerance. So I'm going to click on this real quick. So here's a fixed tolerance. So we could actually choose here what tolerance we want. So if we have a low tolerance for change, I'm going to bring it over here to the left. That means I'm going to remove less anchor points because I'm telling this tool I really want to keep my shape intact. All right, and if I click and drag to bring it this way, I'm more tolerant of change, which means I'm going to remove more anchor points because I don't really mind if my shape changes up a bit. All right, I'll leave it somewhere around here. What I really want to show you is this, pressure controlled tolerance. So I'm going to come over here and you can put this to whatever value you want. I'm going to start off with 30 and tab on over. All right, so what it's saying right here is that when I'm using low pressure, it's going to be a tolerance closer to 1. And when I'm using high pressure or maximum pressure at this point, it'll go closer to 30. Now, I could come over here and make some more sophisticated tolerances, but I'm going to leave things a little bit simple right now. All right, I also have this option right here, maximum pressure temporarily disables tolerance. So if I click on this, if I press down my hardest, it's going to actually ignore the tolerance. It's just going to remove my anchor point even if it changes the shape. But if I'm pressing down really hard, it's going to use this tolerance. I'll show you what I mean. I'll click OK. And now what I'm doing is just coming over here lightly, just pressing over this, using a little bit of pressure. And once I release, it brought it down to 6 points on here. Now if I come back and press harder, I'm removing those. I got it down to 5. And I got this guy right here. I pressed down as hard as I possibly could to make sure I was removing that one. So let me zoom in on here. I have 2 anchor points here. I'm pressing down really hard, but it's leaving them there. I'm going to press down as hard as I can. I'm using max pressure, and that's why it eliminated him, and now it's gone. All right, so let me show you how we could use that in the real world. So I'm going to grab my DynamicSketch tool again really quick. Over here, I got the panel. And let's see. Over here, I'm going to switch over to stylus pressure. And I'm also going to use a charcoal setting right here. So you could use any of your brushes along with DynamicSketch. So I'm just going to click and drag, draw this guy out. And I start pressing down harder. Oops. There we go. Switch back over here to charcoal. All right, cool. So I got this guy set up. Let me bring this back. Actually, let me just draw this guy out one more time. I messed that up. Stylus pressure, got my chalk. Bring this guy out. There we go. All right, and then once we have these brushes, sometimes we have to expand these guys. So I'm going to go to Object, Expand Appearance. And if you look over here in the PathScribe panel, I have over 1,000 anchor points. So I'm going to come over here and grab my Smart Remove brush. And I'm just going to leave the settings that I had in there. If you take a look, I have a tolerance of 30. But if I max it out, I'll go ahead and remove them no matter what. So I'm going to click and drag kind of hard, not all the way. I'm not using max pressure, but I'm just kind of going along right now. And I get to the edge. Remember, I had 1,145 points. Once I release, I brought it down to 659 points. So just really quick, I was able to bring this down to around half just by swiping this through using some pressure sensitivity on here. Now, if I really want to come in here and straighten things out and just remove all these anchor points, I'm pressing down as hard as possible, and that's why I was able to get rid of all those. All right, so that's a fun little feature for me in there because when it was in beta stages, this was one that I was really voting for and trying to push to get in there. So that's one that I'm always excited to demo. All right, so last thing I want to show really quick, I know we're at about 20 minutes now, is Phantasm. The reason I want to show Phantasm is we have that as the product of the month this month, and also it's a product that's actually bringing in Photoshop type of tools into Adobe Illustrator. And since Jesús, shout out to Jesús, is going to go over some Photoshop stuff in a little bit, I figured it'd be a cool way to tie it in. All right, so here I got this apple, and I created this. This was my one of my first couple of attempts at making a gradient mesh. My first attempt is actually right over here, so it wasn't all that awesome. But then after a couple bits of practice, I came in over here and got this one handled. All right, so I'm going to double click on this to go into isolation mode, and I got this guy selected. Over here under the effect menu, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to find Phantasm. All right, right here in Phantasm, we have all these different options. We have brightness, contrast, curves, desaturate, duotone, exposure, halftone, hue, saturation, invert, levels, shift to color, and we even have temperature and tint. So that's all the type of features that you would normally find in Photoshop. So let's say I had something like this set up. Each one of these points has a different color applied to them. And then my client tells me they love the apple, but it'd be great if it was green. And a lot of times our clients think that just changing the color would be something really simple to do in Illustrator. But a lot of times we end up having to spend a lot of hours making the change, or it's just a pretty difficult change to make. Or sometimes we end up having to raster it out and bring it into Photoshop, and then we lose the ability of being able to scale as much as we want. So right in here, with Phantasm, I'm going to make some quick work of this. So Effect, Phantasm, I'm going to use hue and saturation the same way I would in Photoshop. Now check this out. This panel looks just like the one you would normally see in Photoshop. I got all my little sliders here. What I would normally do is hit colorize, right? And then come over here and decide what hue I would like for my object. So I'm going to come over here and start sliding this guy around. I know I want a green apple, but what kind of green apple? Do I want to go with this crazy bluish green looking teal apple, a nice green apple, or a golden green? So somewhere around here looks good to me. I'm going to up the saturation a little bit. And on the lightness, let's see, I'll back off on it a little bit. That looks pretty good. If I like this, I could save this off and use it on a different project. I could even save this off and use this on a Photoshop project. Or if I have one of these already saved off from Photoshop and I want to use it in this project, I could load it right in here. So I'll click OK to accept that. And now I got my apple. It looks really cool. If I click on it, you see I have a little live effect over here. I show it to my client. She tells me she loves it. But she was brainstorming with her team, and they realized it'd be really cool if they had a blue apple or a purple apple to kind of make themselves stand out. So I can make really quick work of that instead of having to charge them for like a full day's worth of work. Or I can just come back over here, click on Phantasm, and change that. So she wanted more like a bluish purple, so I'll come back around here. It's a little too purple. It's probably a little too blue. So somewhere right around here looks good. I can play around with the saturation again if I want, and make any changes with the lightness. I'll click OK. Now, I'm also the type of guy that this is pretty cool, but I want to make more contrast in here. I like having heavy contrast in my items. So I could do that by using curves. So I'll come over here to Phantasm, curves, bring this guy up. Again, if you have a curves graph that you like that you saved off in Photoshop, you could just grab it and bring it on in here. You could load it up just using this button here, or you could save one off and use it on a different project. All right, so what I want to do is bring up my highlights a little bit. Along with that, I want to bring down these little shadows. I want some drama right here. All right, cool. That looks nice and dark in there. It looks pretty good. I'll click OK. Next, I want to come over here and throw in a little bit of levels. So we got some levels action going on in here. Now I got this histogram. So for those of you folks that got all those histograms saved up on your USB drives, you've been saving them off in Photoshop for years, you can come over here, load them up, and use them right in here. So I'm going to bring up some of that white. And I'm going to set this black point right over here. And most of the action for me happens right here in the midtones. If I bring this over here to the left, it's lightening things up. But if I bring it over towards the right, that's when I'm getting all that drama that I'm looking for. All right, cool. I'll click OK to accept that. And now I got this awesome blue, fully editable apple that I created in Adobe Illustrator with a little help of Phantasm. Now, if you don't have Phantasm on your machine and I pass this off to you, these color adjustments are just going to be baked in there. But if I pass it to you and you have Phantasm installed on your machine, then you're going to have access to all of these effects right here in your appearance panel. You can make whatever changes you want. So there you have it, folks. That's the demo I have prepared for you guys. If you want to know more about Phantasm or any of the products we've been going over earlier, just go to astutegraphics.com and you can go ahead and check it out. Like I said, Phantasm is our product of the month. So we have a couple freebies in there that you can check out. We're also going to be having some pop-up webinars coming soon. So just keep an eye on our social media feed or astutegraphics.com. And real quick, I also have a Never Stop Learning blog. I go through Creative Cloud stuff in there, mostly going between Photoshop and Illustrator. Each week, I just study up on different tools, and I try to create something with it, and I show a video of whatever it was I learned that week. Cool. So there you go, Sally.
It's amazing. That was amazing, Sebastian. Okay, let's give Sebastian some applause. So here in the room and also online, people.
Thanks,
fantastic.
I went over a little bit.
Dopeness. We need a dopeness button in Adobe Connect. That's okay. You did a fantastic job. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So again, he is showing some plugins from AstuteGraphics.com. Not only do they make awesome plugins for Photoshop and Illustrator, but they are very supportive of our Adobe user group community, so we love them. Sebastian, someone is asking about your blog. Could you put your blog information in the chat pod, please, darling? Thank you.
Yeah, that's no problem at all. Let me jump in there real quick. I'll do it right now.
And Sebastian, there is a question for you over on actually in that presenter chat on the right-hand side. We have a question for you, but also someone was asking if there are any issues with Astute plugins and the Bamboo tablet. Do you know of any known issues?
Nope, I haven't run into any problems with any of those. Best way to find out if it's going to work with yours, if you want to see if your tablet's going to work with our plugins, is if it works with the blob brush, then you're good. That's pretty much how we look at it. So, because some people have other tablets that are out there, I don't really know which ones they are, but I hear people, I've heard that there are other tablets out there, and we always just tell them that if the blob brush works with it, it's going to work with our DynamicSketch as well.
Perfect. Great. All right, stand by, everyone.
And as far as tablets and pens go, I see Ed was asking which ones. We work great with Wacom. They're great buddies of ours, so we always want to make sure that our products work well with theirs. And real quick, if you guys are beginners, I'm going to throw in my YouTube channel so you can check out the videos. I usually approach stuff as a first look or as a beginner, and every once in a while I'll do a little bit of workflow stuff that'll take a little bit longer, but the majority stuff is short, sweet, basic stuff.
This is Ed Dempsey from Wacom.
Thank you. So the first promo that we've got going on right now is it's a creative starter pack, and anybody that purchases, and there are different packs for different products. So if you're purchasing an Intuos Creative Pen and Touch, that's the pack, and you get a lot of goodies with it. This is a promotion that will go through the end of the month, although you have until the end of March to be able to register. When you register your product, you're going to get access to the various goodies. That's the bundle that comes with the Creative Pen and Touch. And this is the bundle that comes with the Intuos Pro. Very similar, but you're going to get things like a 90-day Pro membership and 20% off the membership after that 90-day promo. You're going to get a 30-day. Does anybody use lynda.com for training? Yeah, if you don't, check it out. It's really cool. The great thing about this bundle is you're going to get a 30-day trial for lynda.com for online training. I believe there are a couple other little things, but those are the keys. There's the Intuos Pro. For those of you that would like to play with it, we have it in the back. If you happen to bring your own laptop, I do have the drivers available if you need to put them on. Or you can just play with the PC that we have hooked up to it just to get a feel for it. This for the Pro or the Advanced Amateur is really the entry point. The basic Intuos is the Creative Pen and Touch. Starts at $99. Does really, really well. This guy will start at $249, but gives you a lot more flexibility, especially if you're into Creative Cloud and you're using Photoshop and Illustrator, the kind of things that you can do with it. We just introduced a new companion. I have the regular companion, the first generation of the companion. This is the companion 2. This is a brand new product. It's now available from Wacom. What it is, it's a Windows 8.1 laptop. But for those of you that are familiar with the Cintiqs, where you're working on the display with your computer, cool thing about this guy is you'll be able to take it with you and use it wherever using your Mac or another PC. But when you need to just work and you don't have the computer with you, it is a Windows machine. And this is obviously not something that sized up really well with the shift in laptop. This will start at $12.99. It starts at $12.99. It is a full Windows PC with Wacom technology built into it. It is available online right now from Wacom. It's the Cintiq Companion 2. All right, obviously these slides didn't translate perfectly, but this is the 27 HD. It's available in a pen only. It's also available in a pen and touch, so that you can use it as a giant touchpad. Really, really cool device. And the price for what that device is, now this requires you to use your own computer. This is not a standalone computer. This is a display with the Wacom technology built into it, but it's 27 inches. And I have the 22 back there if you'd like to play with it and understand what the feel is like. And then finally, what I want to talk about is the Intuos Creative Stylus 2. How many of you have an iPad? Have you ever wanted to sketch or draw on your iPad? This is a great tool to be able to do that. The iPad does not have pressure sensitivity built into it. The Creative Stylus 2 does. It's Bluetooth. Now that Bluetooth works with specific apps, and you can see a bunch of them that are currently, there are apps being developed to be utilized with this pen, but all of those on the side there are currently compatible with the Creative Stylus 2. $79.99, but it gives you full control, pressure sensitivity, touch sensitivity, hand recognition that knows that my hand is on the screen so that it's not interfering with it. So it only works with an iPad right now, and a third generation iPad or better. Majority of what's out there now is third generation or better. So check that out. That is available online from Wacom.com. It's also available in some retailers, the Best Buy stores. I believe Fry's may also have it, but it's also available. If you can't find it someplace, just go to Wacom.com. And that's it. So thank you again so much. I'm going to turn it over to Jesús. He's got some cool stuff. If you filled out one of those cards, I will grab that from you. At the end of the evening, we're going to give away a small Intuos Pro. So if you don't have one, you want a chance to take one, well, not take one home with you. We'll actually ship it to you. But you'll have a chance to get your hands on an Intuos Pro, a small one, which is an awesome way to really get into this if you're not currently using one. So thank you again. Jesús, all yours.
Oh, I got this. Hey, how's everybody doing? Before I get started, can we please get a round of applause for Sally, Carlos, Sebastian, and Ed? Can people online hear me?
Yes, I think so. Can you guys hear him? Yes.
Awesome.
Coming in loud and clear.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jesús Ramirez. I run a website called the Photoshop Training Channel. And if you want to find out more about me, that's where you can go. You guys are probably not here to hear my bio. But before I get started, I wanted to give away a gift. Last time I presented for Sally, I gave away a gift right before I started. And I asked a question. And the person that gave the best answer got that gift. So I was thinking of what could I ask this time. And I really couldn't think about anything, but then I noticed that somebody's wearing the right shirt for this event. So I want to give that person this hat, Barcelona, my favorite soccer team. So here we go. That's the first gift of the night. There'll be more. Yeah, Barca all the way. Okay, so give me a second here while I bring up Photoshop and get started. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about Wacom tablets, obviously. And this is a tablet that I'm working with right now, is the Intuos Pro. And both Carlos and Sebastian went through some of the features that it has. So I'm just going to talk about how they work with Photoshop and a little bit with Illustrator, excuse me, with Lightroom. And I'm going to start out by just explaining to you guys, in case you don't know, the differences between relative and absolute positioning when it comes to using a tablet. It's different than a mouse. A mouse uses relative positioning. So if you're trying to scroll and you reach the edge of your table, you usually pick up your mouse, bring it back, and then drag again to go further into the corner of the screen. With Wacom tablets, you have absolute positioning, which means if I click on this part here of the tablet, if you see on screen on the corner here, the cursor goes directly to the corner. So that's one thing you have to get used to when working with Wacom tablets, absolute positioning. Also, I think Carlos talked about this. There's 6 axes of motion. Most tablets have at least 3 and some have 5. And the axes of motion are the x-axis, which is left and right, the y-axis, which is up and down, z-axis, which is pressure. And this particular tablet that I'm working with now has 2,048 levels of pressure sensitivity. There's also
tilt, and I'm going to show you how tilt works with Photoshop. So I'm going to just select a soft brush. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to select one of the brushes here that will show us the preview of how the pen works. And I'm tilt. You can't see my tablet, but I'm tilting the pen, and that preview shows the tilt of the pen. So when you paint, you have that tilt that creates a gesture, kind of like when you're drawing or painting. So that's the fourth axis of movement. There's also bearing, and what bearing is if you have your tablet, the pen touching the tablet, you can do a 360 turn on that. That's bearing. And then rotation, if you have your pen on your tablet, you can rotate your pen, and that's only for the artist brush. And this is not an artist brush, so I can't show you that. If you buy an entry-level tablet, you'll get the first three levels of motion, X, Y, and Z, which is left, right, up, down, and pressure sensitivity. With the Intuos Pro and the Cintiq, you get the other two, tilt and bearing. And with the special pen that you have to buy separately, you get rotation. So I'm going to get started on showing you some of the features with this particular tablet. There's also touch sensitivity. So it sort of works like your iPhone, for example. You can pinch and zoom just by using two fingers and pinching, just like a smartphone. And you can also scroll up, down, left, right, again using two fingers, a lot like your MacBook. There is also, yeah. Yeah, bearing, the pen is standing still, and the top part rotates 360 degrees. With rotation, the pen is standing still, and you rotate the pen. There's also a three-finger touch, which brings up the radial menu, and you get different preferences, which could be customized. And there's different other things that you can do with touch, but those are the only ones that we're going to talk about for now. There's also, and actually I don't want to bring this up just yet. This is the preferences for the Wacom tablet. There's also the express keys, which are those keys here. And if you just lightly touch them without pressing them, you get this preview, and it tells you what each individual button does. And you can customize those as well. And then we have the touch wheel, which in this case helps me increase and decrease the size of my brush by touching it and then rotating, going around it, sort of like the old iPod. And if you push on the button, on this center button here, it brings up that menu, and you can choose what the rotation of that wheel will do. And this is all customizable. So for example, you may not want to cycle through layers. You'll probably never really use that feature. So you can set it to like undo or redo. So instead of just pressing Control-Alt-Z, you just spin that little wheel around and you'll go back really, really fast, and it's really cool. Oh, and one other thing, the pen. Let me zoom out here. Over to the pen. With the pen, you have an eraser. So if you are drawing in Photoshop or painting and you flip the pen over, it will become the eraser tool, and you can erase. And you also have two buttons that you can push. Currently, they're set for right-click and left-click. But if you can customize them to do something else, and I'll show you how that works, because that's actually one of the most useful things you can do. So I'm going to tap with 3 fingers on the tablet, and it's going to bring up the radial menu, and I can click on the Wacom tablet preferences. And I think Carlos went over this. You can have different devices, which tool, the keys, the touch, the grip pen, and these are the settings that you can change. So right now we're going to work with the grip pen. I'm going to click on that. The bottom button is currently set to right click. I'm going to change it to Alt, because when you're in Photoshop and you have the brush tool selected, if you press Alt, that turns into the eyedropper tool, which allows you to select the color. So it's a lot easier when you're painting to push that button right on your thumb and then select the color and then keep painting, as opposed to just clicking and dragging over onto the eyedropper tool. Even if you're using keyboard shortcuts, it's still a lot easier. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to click on this button here, click on Modifier, and use the Option key on the Mac, Alt on the PC. Press OK. And on this double click, I'm going to change it to keystroke. So I'm going to do a keyboard shortcut, and I'm going to set undo. That way, if I'm painting and I want to do a quick undo, I can just press on the top button, and it'll undo the changes. And you're going to see how all this works. So right now, I'm going to press Command Option Z, which is undo, and I'm going to give it a name and press OK. And now that's set up. I'm going to come back into the tablet here, and I'm going to select a different brush just so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm going to just enable that layer, create a new layer. So now that I'm painting, actually this is, let me, I'm going to come back in here, that way you can see. I'm going to just delete that layer. So now that I'm painting, I can push the key, and I don't know if you can see the cursor on screen there. Actually, Adobe Connect is not showing the icons and cursors that are in Photoshop, but if you were looking at my screen, you'll see the eyedropper tool. So I can select the eyedropper tool there. You can see the preview there. And I can choose a color. And then as soon as I release the button, I can paint with that color. If I make a mistake, I can just press the top button on the pen and just undo. And there you go. I got to be closer to the tablet. I was too far away from it. So I can select the color, paint, make a mistake, hit the other button for undos, and maybe if I choose black, and you can see it better. The other thing I wanted to talk about is pressure sensitivity in Photoshop. So we have the brush tool selected, and this button here controls the pressure. It just turns it on. So if I have that off, oops, let me turn that layer back on. If I have that off and I paint, there's no pressure sensitivity. If I push that, see the difference. When I disable that, if I click on this button, now we have opacity. This is without it. I click on that. This is with it. You can use both of them at the same time if you want to. Now there's more. These two override whatever's in your brush presets. So if I open up the brush panel, I can control my shape dynamics, and I can control my size jitter using pen pressure. And we're going to go more into this later, so if you don't understand, I'm going to show some examples of how this works with a project. But you can control your size jitter here, how much the size is going to change, and what the minimum diameter is going to be, and you can use that. But remember, this is going to override it. So if I come in here and just push this button, it's going to override what I did there. One thing that I'm going to show you is how it works with Lightroom. Obviously, Photoshop has a lot of tools where you can use pressure sensitivity, but with Lightroom you only have one, and that's the adjustment brush, which is here on the right. If I click on that, this is, by the way, this is just a white JPEG. It's not a raw file, but I opened it up just to show you how it works. So if I paint, nothing happens, obviously, but if I press O on the keyboard, that brings on the overlay, and you can see what I painted. And if I lightly paint, you can barely see, I don't know how visible it's on the screen, but you can see how the pressure sensitivity works with Lightroom as well. So you can use this when you're dodging and burning portraits and things like that. So the pressure sensitivity works with Lightroom. So we're going to get started with some little mini projects that are going to showcase the features of Lightroom, Photoshop, and the Wacom tablet. The first picture we're going to work with is this image here, which I took in Florence, Italy. I don't remember what this museum was called, but I'm going to exaggerate this. I'm going to do some dodging and burning, which means highlighting and creating shadows. But I'm really going to exaggerate it so you see the outcome. So I got my adjustment brush tool selected, and I can paint here on the side, and I'm going to press O again on the keyboard just to get rid of the overlay, and I'm just going to increase the exposure just so you can see how that works. So maybe you can create some dramatic effects by lightly touching, and I'm actually pushing too hard. I'm at a weird angle. I'm actually too tall for this podium, so I kind of have to hunch down, and it's kind of weird to get the right touch, but you get the idea. And then if I click on new, I can create another one, and this one's going to be for the exposure. And again, obviously this is not looking too good, but I'm just doing an extreme to show you how this would work on a portrait or something like that. Another thing that you can do is, this is taken in Venice, and I like those buildings here, but I don't see a lot of detail. So something I can do is just paint lightly on here, and then just maybe bring up either the contrast or the exposure and get some of that detail back. And the cool thing about Wacom, Lightroom, and Photoshop is that they all work together. Obviously, I can do a lot more to this image to bring down the detail. I probably brought the exposure way too much, but for this demo, we're going to call that good. once you have your pictures set up in Lightroom, you can take them into Photoshop and continue editing them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Photo, edit in Adobe Photoshop. So that's going to take this image into Photoshop, and let me see if that came up in Photoshop. Okay, here we are. So what I'm going to do in Photoshop is I'm going to take advantage of Photoshop's clone tool and the Wacom tablet. So I want to remove the people from this scene. It'll be a much nicer print if we don't have tourists walking around. So one of the things I can do is I can use the clone stamp tool, which is this one right here, to clone these people out. And I want to use the area on this side to clone this side, but obviously the angles are not going to work because I'm going from the wall's going to the left here and the wall's going to the right. One way to overcome that problem is by going into Window and bringing up the Clone Source panel. And if you click on this button here, right next to the W for horizontal, actually for width, but it's the horizontal button. Now I'll show you what that does. I'm going to hold Alt, and actually I'm not going to hold the Alt or Option. I'm just going to push the button that we set earlier on the pen to find a place to clone from. So maybe this area here. I can come to this side and I can start cloning those people away like so. And let me just turn that on. Brush is a little small, so I'll make it bigger. And obviously that was a little too quick. I could have done a better job, but you get the idea. I'm using the pressure sensitivity to really blend those pixels together. And I'm not liking this part here, so I can select from another area to clone from, maybe here, like so. And I could also use maybe the patch tool for this area to get rid of the people in this part. I'm just going to draw around them. So click and drag, find a good spot, maybe here, and those people are gone. I sort of missed a spot here, but that's okay. It's just a demo. I mean, I could come back here with maybe the clone tool here and just fix that and just tap lightly so you blend those pixels together nicely. One thing that I didn't do that I would have done if I wasn't doing a demo, so I would have created a new layer and I would have created all my adjustments on that layer. That way, for example, in this part here, that way is non-destructive, so I can always come back and edit that. So I didn't do that for the original background, but you always want to do that. You always want to edit it non-destructively. So now that we're in Photoshop, we're going to continue working with Photoshop with other projects that have different problems to solve. And I'm going to close these files because we don't need them anymore. And we're going to work with this image. And what I want to do is I want to mask her out and put her in Florence, Italy. Now I've already gone ahead and created just a quick little mask. It's nothing too advanced. If you notice, the edges are very, very sharp. And she had a lot of straight hairs and strands going all over the place. And the sweaters had these little fuzzy lint and strands as well. Let me turn that back on so you can see, like in this area here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the Wacom tablet to help us bring back some of those straight hairs and some of that stuff on her sweater. That way the composite looks realistic. We're going to start with the straight hairs, and actually it's really not that difficult. I'm going to select the brush tool, and I'm just going to select a brush of 1 pixel, and I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to select the color that's near her hair. I'm pressing the button that I said earlier, the Alt key, the modifier key. I click, and then I can just paint some of those hairs. Just follow the hair that she already has to create those strands. Now, it might not look very good, especially because I'm going really fast, but I can probably get it to a level where you can see how it works. Let me actually turn this Florence. And actually, I was going too hard, but you get the idea. So I'm going to zoom out So you can sort of see how painting that strands of hair makes it more realistic, because if you actually try to mask her out using one of many techniques, it's going to be really difficult. Her hair is black, the background's dark, there's so many stray hairs, so it's a lot easier to just make a mask, get rid of all the stray hairs, and you paint them in later using colors that are found next to her hair, and then just follow the flow of her hair, just paint those in. It's a whole lot easier. Now, to fix this this part here, we're going to create a custom brush. Well, not really a custom brush. We're going to edit a brush that's going to give us the results that we want. So I'm going to find one of those brushes, and these brushes here, they're a little hard to see. I can pretty much use any one of those. They create, let me make a new layer. They create these little strands there. Let me make those bigger so you can see. They create that shape right there. So we're going to use that to mimic the shape of the sweater. So I'm going to go into the brushes panel. I'm going to click on size jitter, which makes some smaller than others. So now when I paint, there's different size. Pen pressure is a control. I'm going to change the angle jitter so they're all in different angles. So, and I'm going to increase the spacing as well because I don't want so many together. So maybe something like that. And maybe even more spacing. That'd probably be good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close this. I'm going to disable these layers, add a new layer, select the color from her sweater, and just paint right above that. And actually, if I enable the Florence there, you can kind of see how that works. And just keep selecting colors if you see that the color is different, like so. And then when you're done, you can just click and drag that layer and put it under her. So you have the original colors above that, and you have those little fuzzy things in her sweater sticking out. So that's how you would go about masking out a complicated selection and using the Wacom tablet to help you draw in the details that you missed. Before I move on to the next demonstration, does anybody have any questions online, Sally?
We do have one question asking if you've ever encountered problems with Lightroom 5 and the Bamboo Touch. I don't know if you've ever used those two
I've
together.
never used the Bamboo, so I don't know.
Okay. Ed, any known issues that you know of with Lightroom 5?
Nothing that I'm aware of, but the best place to look that up is at Wacom.com. Click on the link community. Find all kinds of conversations.
Okay, so the best thing is to go to the, I guess it's like the Adobe's version of forums. Go to Wacom.com and click on community, and you'll, if anyone else is encountering those issues, you will find it there, and maybe you can start your own conversation, see if you can get your problem solved. So I think we're ready to move on.
Okay. Yeah.
Continue, Jesus.
Okay, so now we're going to use the brush tool and the blend modes on the brush tool to create different effects. So we're going to move on to a different picture, and I'm just going to close this and not save it. And the one we're going to use is this one here. So we're going to create two effects right now, actually three. I'm going to show you how to create digital blood. It's actually very easy. You use the brush tool and you use the different blend modes found in Photoshop. So actually, you know what? What we're going to do is we're going to turn him into a vampire. How about that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the plumb stamp tool just to extend his teeth a little bit. I'm going to hold the Alt key or the Option key on the pen, which is one of the keys that I modified, and I'm going to clone from here. I can decrease the brush size, and actually to make sure I have a soft brush, and maybe increase the hardness a little bit, size down. And we can be a little bit bigger. Okay, so we extended his fang there, and now we do the same thing on this side. Maybe a little bit more. And I'm just going to use the brush tool and just sort of fix the mistakes that I made. And obviously this is a little rough. But anyway, so those are his fangs. Now I'm going to show you how to draw blood. He's a vampire now. And I don't know if you know this, but vampires evidently cry blood, or so I've been told. And I'm going to select red. and this is going to be my blood. Now, you may know that Photoshop has blend modes here in the layers panel. You can apply different blend modes to the layers that you're working with. You can also apply blend modes to your brush strokes. And actually, the brush tool has 2 more blend modes than the layers panel. It has the behind blend mode and the clear blend mode. And this is not really part of the tutorial, but I thought about it, so I might as well talk about it. So the behind blend mode allows you to, let me just open up a new layer. Let me set it to normal. And I'm just going to paint with red here. If I change the blending mode to behind and maybe change the color to something else like maybe blue, I can only paint behind those pixels. See how I don't go over the red that I painted earlier? That's because I have a blend mode set to behind. So it's sort of the opposite of the the locking the transparent pixels. So if I lock the transparent pixels, I can only paint in the pixels that I've already painted on. The behind blend mode is sort of the opposite. I'm gonna unlock that. The other blend mode found here is the clear blend mode, and it's actually one of the most useless blend modes in my opinion because it's just like the eraser tool. It erases pixels. That's all it does. So those are the 2 extra ones that the brush tool has. So I'm going to go to normal for now, and I'm just going to delete this layer, add a new one, and we're going to create the blood. So I'm going to choose red, and I'm going to do this really quickly here. So hopefully, actually, let me bring the opacity down just a little bit, and not the pressure sensitivity, and just get the general shape. If I had a little more time, I will actually go in here and figure out how the blood would go on the ridges of his cheeks and all that, but we don't have too much time, so I'll do it as fast as I can. Okay, so that's just a general outline of where the blood's going to be. Now we're going to use the blend modes to help us finish this project. So I'm going to go into blend mode. I'm going to choose multiply. The multiply blend mode darkens the pixels. So now it's going to start darkening that red and make it into a darker red. And we can use that to simulate blood dripping down somebody's face. So maybe I'm going to increase the opacity just to go a little bit faster. I'm not going to be as exact, but you'll see the effect that it's going to do. And I'm going to finish it off by adding a new layer, painting with white, and I'm going to change my blend mode back to normal. And these are going to be the highlights found in the blood. So this is the highlight here. Maybe more highlights here. And get a better highlight here in the bottom. This is a really bright one because this is where there's more blood. So if I zoom out, you kind of see how that looks. Now the red doesn't look that good, but that's okay. I can go select the layer where I painted with red, go into image, adjustment, levels, and just darken that up until I get a red that sort of looks like blood. And as you can see, with a little more time, you could see how you can really get a realistic blood effect just by using the Wacom tablet, pressure sensitivity, and the different blend modes. Now I'm going to show you how to create scars in Photoshop. And now we're going to use pressure sensitivity, and we're going to use layer styles to help us add the different texture that somebody may have if they had a scar on their face. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete these layers just because I don't want to get confused or confuse you guys. And actually, this is what it looked like earlier when I took a little more time creating the blood. So now we're going to create some scars, and I'm going to show you how that works. I'm just going to create a new layer. I'm going to select the brush tool. And by the way, I'm only using the regular brush that comes with Photoshop. I'm not using any fancy, brushes that I bought or anything. You can do most of this stuff just by playing around with the different brush presets and different settings. So right now I'm just going to use the regular soft brush, and this is what it looks like. It's nothing special. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the size jitter. I'm going to increase the scattering. I'm going to change that to pen pressure so the pen controls how much scatter that there is. So now look at the difference, and actually I'll make that bigger so you can see. That's what that looks like now. I'm going to bring up the opacity to 100%. And the reason it's sort of gray is because I'm pressing lightly, and if I press harder, it's darker. I'm going to come back into the brush tip and decrease the spacing just so those little dots are closer together. And I think this may work now. So That's how we're going to create our scars, just by using this brush. So I'm going to close this. I'm just going to turn off that layer so we don't see it. I'm going to add a new layer. And the color that we use now really doesn't matter. So I'm just going to use black for now. And I'm just going to paint where I think that guy's scar would be. So maybe here. Okay, so there's a scar. Now we're going to give it the texture by using layer styles. So I'm going to double click on the side here of the layer, and it's going to bring up the layer style panel. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the fill opacity to 0, and it's going to make it disappear. Now the only thing that's going to, the only way we're going to get pixels back now is by adding different layer styles. For example, bevel and emboss. If I click on bevel and emboss, you can sort of see how now he has a little bevel going on there. I'm going to click on bevel and emboss. The light source in this image is coming from the right side. You can see the right side of his face is lighter than the left side. So we sort of have to match that up, and it actually did a pretty good job. The shading here, so that's more or less where the light is. You know, if it were over here somewhere, then we would change that, but that's not where it is. It's probably there somewhere. What we're going to do now is we're going to click on texture, and we're going to add a texture. And the texture that I'm going to use is the texture found under texture fill. Just press OK. I don't want to save that. And is this one, the first one here. If you right click on it or control click on it and click rename, it'll be the one named clouds. So it's just a bunch of clouds. And I'm just going to press OK for now, and I'm going to zoom in so you can really see what's going on there. So I'm back in texture, and now I can play with the scale and with the depth. So how deep is that scar? So maybe something like that. Then I can add an outer glow, but it's going to be more of a blemish. So I'm going to change the blend mode to normal, change the color to maybe like a reddish color like that, and play with the opacity until I get something that I'm happy with. So maybe something like that. I'm also going to do a color overlay. I'm going to choose maybe red and bring the opacity down just a little bit. So now you can see that there's some blemishes going on there. I also want to create a little shadow. So I'm going to click on drop shadow, and I'm going to use the global light. I'm going to put the distance to 0, size maybe 4. So it's before and after, just a little. It gives it a little bit of shadow and gives it a more definition. I'm going to press OK, and that's how we can create a scar in Photoshop. And the good thing is that this is now a layer. It's an editable layer, so I can come in here and I can create more scars if I want to. Different sizes, maybe a tiny little one, or maybe like a really big one here on this side. And obviously the more time that you spend adjusting the brush and the more time that you spend actually creating the shape of the scar, and the more time that you spend playing around with the different textures, the better result you're going to get. One other thing you can do actually that I forgot to mention with the texture is you can click and drag. Notice how the texture moves. So maybe you like how things look, but you don't necessarily like where the texture is. You can click and then drag it to a different location, and maybe you get a better texture on that face or whatever it is that you're trying to do. Any comments or questions before we move on to the next part? Yeah.
Okay, so the question is, just a second till I find it in my chat. I'm supposed to ask you about a starting point setup that you use in Photoshop with the Wacom. I know everyone has his or her own style, just wanted a starting point and work from there.
Can you ask them if they're talking about like custom keys, or what are they talking about?
So the person who asked that question about the starting point setup with Photoshop and Wacom, can you give me a little more detail in the chat pod? And go ahead and continue. We'll get some answers from you.
Okay. So now we're going to move on into a little bit of illustration, and I'm going to try to create a hairball. And we're going to use the Wacom tablet and the pen for that. And I already have a couple of brushes created, and these I had to create with a little more time. I wasn't going to be able to do it on the fly here for you guys because it just takes a little more time. But essentially, what they look like is, oh man, I thought I brought it in. Oh man, I thought I had the actual shape that I used, but I guess I didn't bring it with me. But I'll still show you what it looks like, kind of. Let me just turn that on. Okay, so this is going to help. This brush here is going to help us create fur, and what that looks like is essentially that. That was created by using just a regular brush. It was really, really tiny, and essentially just creating some lines like that. And then you can, once you have your brush set up, you got to have a white background and a black foreground, and then you go into Edit, Define Brush Preset, and then that becomes a brush. So the brush that we're going to be using for that is this one here, which allows us to create something that kind of looks like fur. And that's where we're going to create our hairball. So we're going to start with this circle here. It's nothing special. It's just a regular old circle. And what we're going to do is we got to define the lighting of this shape. And the easiest way to do that, we're just going to use a shortcut. We're going to go into the layer style, and I'm going to click on gradient overlay to apply a gradient. I'm just going to choose black and white for the foreground and background color. The style is going to be radial. I'm going to click on reverse because I want the darkness to be on the outside and the lightness to be on the inside. Now I can click and drag this around and define where my highlight's going to be. So we'll just say the highlight is here, increase the scale, and now we have our lighting set up. Then I'm going to change the blending mode to overlay, and maybe bring the opacity down. We don't want it to be too noticeable. I just want to know in my mind where the highlight is and where the shadows are. So we have our opacity, maybe 41% will be good. And I'm just going to leave it there. And I'm just going to control click and right slice a layer. So that's going to apply that effect onto the original layer. So now it's all in one layer. I'm going to go into my brush panel, and I'm going to select a different brush. I have a brush here that just creates those lines. And what those lines are going to help me do is create a better shape for this ball. But I'm not going to use the paintbrush. You can also use brushes with other tools, for example, the smudge tool. So if I select that same brush with the smudge tool, I can come in here and let me make that a little bit bigger so you can see. And maybe I can zoom in. I'm going to create this effect here all around the ball. That way I don't have shredded edges, and we have something that resembles fur on the edges. So I'm going to go really quickly here, just not waste too much time. And I'm going so fast that Photoshop is having trouble keeping up, so I'm going to wait a second there. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to call that good, but usually what I would do is I would go around the entire circle here and make sure that the entire ball is fuzzy like that, like it has little strands of hair coming out. And by the way, you can use the same technique that I'm doing now with the smudge tool with a mask, for example. And maybe you're, again, cropping, masking out hair, and you can smudge some of that hair back in there so you can get those strands to come out if you're working with a really difficult image to mask. Okay, so now we have our fur ball there. I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to create a clipping mask. And what a clipping mask allows me to do is to paint on this new layer, but only the pixels that are covering the ball are going to show. So I'm going to click on my brush tool, select that fur layer, and I'm going to choose a brownish color, sort of like the mid-tone, and I'm just going to start painting that fur. And I got to create a flow of fur. So it's not just random. I'm really trying to imagine if this ball had fur, which way would it flow? I'm going to go a little bit faster just because we don't have too much time now. Now I'm going to click on my color picker here and just choose a darker brown. And if you remember from earlier, I can disable this. You can see this is the dark part. So now I'm going to start painting dark fur here in the bottom. And I'm just going to lightly press on my tablet and just add some of those darker ones here on top. And I'm going to actually choose something that's very close to black and just get those really dark ones right down here. And again, if you're ever doing something like this, you got to take your time. I'm actually going really, really fast here, but it's not looking too bad. What I'm going to do now is select maybe like a lighter color for my highlights, maybe that yellow here. And we know the highlight was up here somewhere. And also, if we have light coming from the top right, there's going to, and this is some sort of floor, there's going to be some bounce light coming in through that. So I'm just going to add some of that lighter color here at the bottom as well, for that bounce light. And then I can come in there and just keep doing what I'm doing, just building up on the fur here until I get something that looks like fur. If I zoom in, you'll see what that looks like. Just by quickly applying those, just those hand gestures. I really didn't do anything too special, just had a simple brush and just was able to zoom in. Now, one other thing you may want to do, one way I can fix this is by also merging these two layers together. So I'm going to select both of them, press Command E, that's Control E on the PC, and I'm going to go into Filter and Liquify. And the Liquify tool actually has pressure sensitivity as well. It's right here on this checkbox. And let me show you how that works. If I'm going to make a larger brush, and I'm using the bracket keys on the keyboard. So if I lightly tap, you see how it barely moves it. Now if I push and drag, you see the difference that it makes. So you can really control your liquify distortions by using a Wacom tablet, just with very subtle touches or really hard ones. So what I'm going to do here is sort of fix up my fur ball here. Something like that. Obviously you want to take your time, and I'm almost done. I can obviously come in there and keep working on the hair. Maybe I noticed that there's not enough of that darker here on this part, so I could maybe come paint more of that in there. This is actually a little too bright, so maybe cover that up and just keep working, following that same flow until you get something that you're happy with. And again, I'll zoom in just so you can see what that looks like. And now that I'm seeing it, what I would do, create even darker ones, just because I don't think the ones down here are dark enough. So. But anyway, I could be here all day, and that's what that looks like. Okay, so now I'm going to show you another thing you can use the Wacom tablet for that's probably not too obvious. You can use it for 3D. So I'm going to show you how to create a 3D shape using the Wacom tablet, and then I'm going to show you how to texture that shape. So we have a flagpole, and we're going to create a flag. A waving flag actually, and we're also going to texture it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer, and the color I fill it with really doesn't matter. So I'm just going to fill it with black right now. I'm going to click on the 3D panel. If you don't see that, you can go into Window, 3D. In the 3D panel, I can click on Mesh from Depth Map. And actually, you know what? I just thought of one thing. It's probably going to make more sense to you. So I'm just going to leave my brightness at 50% and my hue and saturation at 0. That's going to create 50% gray. So there's 256 levels of gray. That one's right in the middle, so or 255. So now I'm going to fill with that color. Oops, wrong keyboard shortcut. Option Delete or Alt Backspace on the PC to fill with the foreground color, which is 50% gray. Now I'm going to click on Mesh from Depth Map, click on make sure Plane is selected, and then click on Create. And this is going to create a 3D model that we can control in 3D space. I can rotate the camera so you can see it's a 3D model, 3D space. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply strokes onto that flag to distort the shape of it. So if I click on Depth Map here, notice this button, Edit Source. I want to click on that. And I'm going to set my default colors to black and white. I'm going to select my brush tool, and I'm just going to go for just the same soft brush we've been using all along. I'm going to do one stroke. That one's black. And I'm going to press X on the keyboard to swap foreground and background color, and I'm going to do another stroke. That's white. I'm going to press Command S to save. Right now we're saving the PSV file, which is going to give the shape to our flag. If I come back into the tab with the flagpole, notice what happened. When I painted with black, it pushed the 3D model in, and it pushed it forward when I painted with white. So we're going to use that to paint in the shape of the flag, and it's going to be translated into 3D space, and we can have a 3D model. So I'm going to come back into this layer, and I'm going to make sure I have 50% gray selected. I'm going to fill the layer just to get rid of that. And instead of painting with black and white, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Dutch and burn tools. That way it's a little easier to control. And I'm just going to select the midtones, and I'm just going to find the right brush stroke. I'm not happy with that one, so maybe I disable pressure sensitivity. There we go, so something like that. And I'm just going to create the folds. We're going to create the flag. I'm painting very, very lightly. You don't want to go too hard with that. And then I'll do the same thing with the dodge tool for the highlights or the areas that rise up on the flag. I'm going to press Command S to save. I'm going to go back into the flagpole, and there's our flag. I can obviously keep working a little bit more into it, more in those brush strokes to get the right shape, but you get the idea. Another thing I'm going to do is when you see me click on this square here at the bottom, I'm controlling the camera. I'm not really moving the 3D object around. This is moving the camera. If I want to control the 3D object, I got to have the Move tool selected, click on the 3D object, and then you see these three icons here. The blue one controls the Z-axis, red one controls the X-axis, and the green one the Y-axis. So now I can rotate this, go to the top, and I can scale it in so the folds don't go in too deep. See how I can make them really, really deep or not so deep? So maybe something like that. Come back. Now that I'm looking at them, I'm not liking them, so I'm going to go back. Sorry, I'm a perfectionist that way. So I'm going to come back, and just with 50% gray, I'm just going to paint on the entire image because I think it went too far. So I'm painting the entire thing, and I'm just going to fade it. Just so that same effect is not so strong, just a notch below what it was before. Command S to save. And I hope that works. And you know what, we're going to call this good for now. So that's our flag. Oh, and by the way, when you're working with 3D, when you're done, you want to render things, it's usually a good idea to make a selection with the marquee tool, click on this button here. We're not going to have the time for that now, but you're going to see Photoshop is going to render this out and actually turn that into the final image. And at this point, I'm happy with what I have, so I'm just going to press the escape key, and I know that things are going to look good when we're done. So what I'm going to do now is click on the Move tool to bring up my 3D menu, click on the object, and right here where it says Layer 1, I have more controls. One of those controls is the diffuse. The diffuse controls the texture, what's the color and texture of the object. So I can come in here and edit the texture. So whatever I paint on here is going to be visible on the other side. And actually, just to show you, I'm going to go into View, or actually Window, Workspace, where is it? Arrange. Here we go, Arrange to up vertical. And I'm going to close this, and I'm going to move this here. Actually, I closed the wrong one. Sorry about that. Let me try that again. Layer, Use, Edit Texture. And this time I will get the right windows here. Okay, so we have these two. This is the 3D model, and this is the texture for that 3D model. If I come in here and I fill it with maybe like a really, really light gray, maybe something like that. You see how it gets updated on this side? That was the color. So now, let me zoom out. That way I could really see the entire flag here. So now I can paint something on this flag, whatever we want. So why don't we create sort of like a hand-drawn American flag. So I'm going to select this brush here, and I'm going to select red, and I'm going to close this, and I'm going to do this really quickly here. So I'm just going to paint on here. And you see how that gets translated onto this side. And these are, of course, the stars. And obviously, I can make this much better, but this is going to be good for now. So now I can come back into, I'm going to close this because we're not going to need that for now. Yes, I'm going to save it. So that's our flag. I can come in here, I could render it, and if we waited about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, we would have a render object that will fit onto that flagpole. And actually, before I render it, what I would really do is work with a few things. Just so you guys know, there's something called an infinite light, which is what lights is seen. It's obviously too bright, so maybe you bring the brightness down. And usually what I do is make a little render just for a few seconds and see what the color is going to look like. And if I'm happy with it, I press escape, make any other adjustments if I need to. I don't want any shadows being casted, so I'm just going to click on the shadow so there's no shadows there. And if it's still too bright or there's lights that are not, that you're not happy with, there's another light source, which is under the environment. And this is the IBL, this is an image-based light. I can bring that down as well. And if we were working with an object that had reflections like a car, this is what would give the reflections to the object. There's no reflections here, so just giving light. And we're going to move tool, put that into position. And actually, I want to move the 3D object, not the camera. So I would find the right spot for the flag. We'll say that's good. Click on it and render. That's it. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
Hang on just a second.
Yeah.
So we do have some clarification from Jose about his question. Give me just a moment to find it here. He meant for your workflow with the express keys and pen combination that could be convenient in Photoshop. For example, what would your standard workflow be? Or do you switch depending on the project and shortcuts in Photoshop? I don't know if that question
Switch depending on the project, but the most important one is the one that I showed, which is the modifier key, the Alt or Option key, because a lot of the tools in Photoshop change when you press the Alt key. For example, I mean, we just saw the brush tool that changes into the eyedropper. If you're using the Dodge tool, if you hold Alt, it changes into the Burn tool. So yeah, the Alt key for sure, and then undo is easy just on top for me.
Okay, great.
But, yeah, the modifier keys on the actual tablet different depending on the.
And the general consensus that everyone has is that you are completely amazing. So.
And you know what? That's pretty much all I had. Unless anybody has any questions or comments.
So anyone have any final questions for any of our fantastic speakers before we finish the presentation? If you have any questions online, please type them in. Anyone in the room have any questions? Okay, let me get the mic for you.
When you edit an existing brush and you leave Photoshop and come back, are the edits still there?
No, you have to save it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, that's a really good question. Yeah, people online, I don't know if they heard them or not, but yeah, you have to save your brushes, otherwise they won't be there. Good question.
Okay, that's all the questions that we have.
But I thought about one thing that I could still show. We're going to go back into one of the pictures. I don't know if we were going to have time for this, but you know, we're here now. Why not show it? We're going to go back into this image here. I don't know if this is the best image to show this example, but sometimes you want to create skin texture because some areas might be overblown and you have to use a photo and you want to bring in some skin texture. So I'm going to show you how to quickly create skin texture in Photoshop. So I'm just going to open up a new document and I don't know, 600 by 600 would be good. And I'm going to set my foreground colors to black and white. I want to paint with my favorite brush, the one we've been using all along, this one here. Pressure sensitivity on, opacity sensitivity on, and I'm just going to create little tiny irregular shapes like that. They don't, let me zoom in just so you can see, they don't really, they're not really a circle, they're not really anything, they're just like those weird shapes. So I'm just going to create a whole bunch of those, some bigger than others, some little tiny ones. And okay, that's going to be a brush. That's going to this is going to be the brush is going to give skin texture. So I'm going to go into edit. define brush preset, and I'm just going to call this one skin texture. I'm going to press OK. I'm going to come back into this image here, just create a new layer just in case. And if I paint, that's our brush. Obviously, that doesn't look a lot like skin texture, but we can use the shape dynamics, for example, increase the size jitter all the way. You can see the preview of what's happening down here. Now when I paint, there's different sizes. And I'm going to increase the angle jitter all the way as well, because even though they're different sizes, it still starts looking at like a pattern. But if you apply the angle jitter and the size jitter, you'll never see a repeating pattern. They're just little different specks like so. And I can maybe apply the opacity jitter to pen pressure. So some are darker than others. If I press lightly, they're really light. And if I press really hard, it creates those hard specks. And what I can do now is add a new layer, close this, and make it a really, really tiny brush. See how small I have to go for this? Yeah, something like that. So turn that off, add a new layer, press the modifier key on the pen, which is the Alt key on the PC or Option on the Mac, and I can select one of the darker colors on our skin, and I can start adding some of that skin texture. Actually, you know what? I think it'll show better if I do it. I do it here where it's really blown out. So you can sort of see, I don't know how visible it is on the screen, but I'm starting to break some of that texture back, and I can select different colors, maybe some darker ones, some lighter ones. And I'll disable the layer just so you can see. So that's what that looks like. So that's one way you can use to add skin texture back into an image that has overblown skin. And since it's a layer, you can do a lot of things with it. You can bring down the opacity if it's not dark enough. If you want it darker and it is 100%, you press Command J on the Mac or Control J on the PC to duplicate it, and now you have an effect that's twice as strong. If you needed one more for whatever reason, you could do that, Command J, and it creates an even stronger effect.
Excellent, excellent presentation. So you guys online, how about a little applause? So again, you can go to that little person with their hand raised, click the triangle next to it, and give him some applause. This is fantastic.